At the end of this year, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, also known as the NCAA, brought in a whopping $1.1 billion in revenue. Out of this $1.1 billion, the student athletes got zero of it. From reading Sports Illustrated magazines to books on student athletes and how their day goes and their daily routine, I think I've grasped a good idea of a day in the life of a student athlete in Division One and how they're getting kind of screwed out of the whole thing, not being able to get paid. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys a little about where the money comes from and also the athlete's body and the wear and tear over the years, and also I'm going to be talking about like how they spend their time on and off the field. Along with the NCAA revenue, most universities' revenue does come from sports. While making over $1 billion this year, many question where the money comes from. In Goff Griffin's book, Should College Athletes Be Paid? He talks about how fans alone bring in $50 million a year just from coming to games. This is not to mention the merchandise and sales. In the SI Magazine article by Charlotte Wilder, she states that UCLA has a $280 deal with Under Armour, and she also mentions that Michigan just signed a $173.8 million contract with Nike. And to top it all off, these athletes are getting none of the money. So they're wearing these brands such as Nike and Under Armour and getting 0% of the profits. This is wrong because they're wearing these brands on TV and for everyone to see, and these brands are making money off this and the schools, but the people actually wearing the brand, who are the student athletes, are getting none of the money, and this is wrong. In an article by Tim Daniels, he talks about how the NCAA just passed $1 billion in revenue, like I was saying. But Daniels talks about how the president of the NCAA makes $4 million a year. And this is obviously wrong, as he's getting overpaid, because these athletes are getting paid nothing, and he's getting paid $4 million to run it. I'm not saying he shouldn't be paid at all because he is running the business, but I'm saying the players should get a cut. And like I said, the players shouldn't be getting paid millions and millions, but give them a small cut because they're obviously bringing in all this revenue, and without them, there'd be no show. And as we see now in 2020, due to this pandemic, there's no college sports going on, so there's not a lot of revenue. So if this was a natural thing or a normal thing, there would be not as much revenue as we can see with this pandemic. Majority of the university's monies come from athletics, and it does show. As you can see in the slide right here, Texas A&M, they made over $200 million in 1 year just from athletics, and they're not the only ones on top. As you can see in this chart, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Auburn, Tennessee, the list goes on. They're all making well over $100 million a year, and this has a big impact on the college because the athletics themselves are bringing over $1 million, even $200 million yearly, and this is huge because that's big for the university. This goes to other things, not just athletics, and this is just really bad because these student athletes are getting no money. The school and athletics itself is just making well over $100 million, and these student athletes are getting nothing. TV broadcast and ticket sales bring in majority of the school's revenue. They only keep a margin, but to put things in perspective, in the Division One men's basketball championship, just basketball, with the television and marketing rights, the NCAA made a whopping $821.4 million. The ticket sales alone of that men's basketball championship also brought in $129.4 million. Obviously, they don't get to keep all that, but the TV markets pay them to televise their games and vice versa, so they do get to keep a good margin of this. And in relation to this, student athletes, they put in crazy amount of hours to get to this goal and have this all happen. They put in hours a person with a sustainable job would put in. So they're doing this with no pay, and they're putting in the same amount of hours as any blue collar worker would. In Kenneth L. Schroeshine's and Colin D. Williams' book, The Miseducation of the Student Athlete: How to Fix College Sports, it is said that not only do these athletes put in 6+ hours a day into the sport, but even after the compensation and the season is over, they're still putting in work. So after the season, all the games are over, there's off season. So they are still putting in these hours that aren't accounted for. Between practice and games, an athlete puts in anywhere from 50 hours a week. So, this is pretty crazy. Like, they're putting 50 hours in and getting no pay from this. This is on top of studies. Like I was saying. So they're doing all this on top of getting a degree. So, it's kind of hard to multitask, and this is a big thing, and you got to give them a lot of credit, especially since they're not getting paid. So they're not getting paid, which is crazy. So in this slide right here, you can see that a typical week for an athlete. So in the red right here, it's athletics. So 33 hours are spent just on athletics. And then academics is 39 hours. So academics and athletics are almost identical, which is pretty crazy. And then sleep is obviously 56 hours. But what surprises me the most is this purple here. It says other and free time. And I'll tell you right now, these D1 athletes are always working. So most of their free time is spent in athletics. So even if we say half of that time is spent working out, doing extra drills, that's over 50 hours a week, which is pretty crazy. So with this being said, they do not have time to get an actual job, which is crazy. 50 hours a week of athletics and all this work, there's no way to get an actual job. Between practice, games, and travels, there's no way you can get an on-campus job or even an off-campus job. Even when the season is over, they still have limited time as off-season workouts begin and their studies continue. These guys have 4 years of eligibility, which means they have 4 years of getting a brutal beating on the field. So as you can see in this chart right here, these are the percentage of D1 underclassmen who declare for the draft. And as you can see, 70 to 50% of them will declare for the draft and go and get a salary, but a good part of them won't get a salary and won't get guaranteed contracts. So that's a risk they're willing to take. These athletes just aren't making money, and it's a risk they're taking just playing all these 4 years. And the guys that don't get drafted, they spend all these 4 years trying to, go get their payday, and they never do. So, as we come to an end here, I hope you guys learned a little something on revenue and how the time spent of a college athlete. And unfortunately, there's nothing me or you could do. But, these young men have tough futures, and it's unfortunate because they all don't get a payday. So if there's something that you guys can learn from here today, money doesn't buy happiness, and the human body is very important.